We had a deciding Game 7 in Big D between two of the top teams in the West, and it was an absolute classic. We will talk about that and more right now on Locked On NHL Game Night.
When that final horn sounds, you know it's time for Locked On NHL Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. Prepare to experience game day reactions like never before. Only on Locked On NHL Game Night. Your team every day.
Hey, hockey fans, welcome to Locked On NHL Game Night, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thanks for making Locked On NHL Game Night your place to get a recap of the night in the NHL. We're available 7 days a week, wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. This episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into an Xbox, no console needed. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to learn more. I'm Eddie Garcia, an LA Kings fan on the West Coast. Heath Shukri writes, a Boston Bruins fan on the East Coast. And together we are here to discuss all the goals, saves, big moments, and stories from the night in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Shu, we had just one game on Saturday, but it was a Game 7.
Listen, good evening or good morning, whenever you're listening or watching this show. All you needed was just one game. And this one was without hyperbole for the ages. And Eddie, I'm ready to dive right into this like a 5-course meal. Let's go. Woo!
No, we had the Avalanche at the Stars in Game 7, second and third place teams in the Central battling two teams with over 100 points this regular season. This could have been a Western Conference Finals type matchup. These two teams are that good. For better or worse, they met in the first round. And the Avalanche had a 2-0 lead on the road early in the third, but the Stars would come storming back behind two Mikko Rantanen goals against his old team to tie it. A late controversial penalty to some on Colorado. Wyatt Johnston scores the go-ahead goal on the power play, and then Rantanen caps it off with a hat trick on an empty net goal to seal it, and Dallas stuns Colorado for a 4-2 win. So much to react to, but I want to start with this first.
Yeah.
The penalty call on Jack Drury of the Avalanche on the Stars' Tyler Seguin. Now, I'm an old school fan. Back in the day, if it was late in the third or in overtime of a playoff game, you had to practically assault someone to get a call. It's a different day in the NHL. What did you think about that call?
I didn't like it, but I understood why. I'm not saying that I disagree with the call, but I understood why they called it because it was a penalty. But man, you talk about just terrible timing of that penalty. Not the call, but the timing of that penalty against Drury. I knew, and you sometimes just have this gut feeling where you know that a certain penalty could potentially tilt the ice in the opposite team's favor. That's exactly what happened. Because the moment that penalty was called, I honestly just knew that Dallas was about to break tie of this game. Because as we talked about, there was already the 2 goals that were scored just prior to that by Mikko Rantanen, and more on him a little later on in this segment. But you just knew that certain calls have a tendency of potentially changing the tenor of a game, and that penalty certainly did.
I agree with you. I thought it was a penalty. I know, again, for some old school fans like me, it's kind of hard to take because of what you grew up with, but it's a different day in the NHL. They are calling those. They're not trying to swallow the whistle in key moments. So if you're an old school fan and you don't like it, you don't like all the referees are deciding the game. I understand that, but it was a penalty. It wasn't like it was a missed call. And, the timing of it was unfortunate, but I do think it was definitely a penalty. You mentioned Mikko Rantanen. Of course, that's going to be the big topic of discussion. Yeah. His first career playoff hat trick, sealing it with the empty net goal, but the 2 huge goals to tie it up. It's the second time this series he's had a 4-point period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
unbelievable. 4 points in one period, not a game, in a period. Mm-hmm. And for this Dallas Stars team, no Jason Robertson, no Mikko Rantanen, to get it done, coming from behind in the third, clutch performance by the Dallas Stars.
And like you mentioned, like Jason Robertson out, Miro Heiskanen out, close, but they were not ready to return for game number 7. But Mikko Rantanen, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if you're a fan of horror movies or horror shows or anything like that, if you're a fan of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre or the Boogeyman, but Mikko Rantanen was in fact the Boogeyman. He was in fact the main character in like Saws, or like that was him tonight. Just when you thought, and we talked about this on a separate show, when was Mikko Rantanen going to wake up? Isn't it crazy now to even say that we were even having that discussion? But here we go. Third period, game 7. Where is he to be found? Oh, Freddy Krueger. He came back. He was alive. And those 2 goals that he scored, I was just absolutely speechless as a hockey fan. And for me, you talk about one of the legendary performances in Stanley Cup playoff history in a game 7, no less. He had a hat trick, which the third goal was scored on the empty netter. But my gosh, Eddie, you talk about a trade that this is going to go down in the annals of NHL history. A trade that happens during a season, and then he gets traded to your division rival later on at around the trade deadline, and lo and behold, he comes back and bites you in the butt come playoff time. Oh, it happens to be in round number 1. Oh, it happens to be in a game 7. And man, Avalanche fans got to be feeling sick for 2 reasons. The penalty call against Drury and Mikko Rantanen come back to haunt them at the worst time, but at the best time if you're a Dallas Stars fan.
Well, if Mikko Rantanen is some sort of a horror villain, I guess Pete DeBoer is like Superman. He's now 9-0 all time coaching in a game 7. 1-0 in New Jersey, 3-0 in San Jose, 2-0 in Vegas, and now 3-0 as head coach of the Dallas Stars in game 7. 9-0 for Pete DeBoer, the head coach of the Stars in game 7. For Colorado, they have lost 7 straight game 7s. They are the exact opposite.
Wow.
And we get a report on the losing team from the hosts of Locked On Avalanche.
All right, so that's how the Colorado Avalanche season is going to end, in a 7-game epic. And Mikko Rantanen, I mean, you couldn't have written that script, Kyle, any better or worse, however you want to look at it. But he's the one that does in the Colorado Avalanche a great game. Avalanche really had this in hand. Once they got going, they were playing very well. And you had a 2-goal lead. And once again, when the dam broke, the Avalanche just couldn't figure out a way to stop it. And now you have the Dallas Stars going on to round 2, another game 7 win for Peter DeBoer, another game 7 loss for Nathan MacKinnon and the Avs.
Yeah, when you say the Colorado Avalanche will have a shorthanded goal, that goal by Nathan MacKinnon, up 2-0 going into third, you check all the boxes. You feel really good about your efforts. And a monumental collapse by the Avalanche and a monumental third period for the Dallas Stars and Mikko Rantanen is really going to shine a light on this Avalanche offseason, top to bottom, what needs to be done, because the Avs, other than that Stanley Cup season, have not made it past the second round. So some questions have to be raised, and that third period is textbook material on what we're going to be addressing.
Absolutely. There's always questions for every team going into an offseason. It is going to be an interesting one for the Colorado Avalanche. And the way you said it, from the top on down, is going to get looked at. So we are going to have a lot to talk about. So make sure you are tuned in to Locked On Avalanche now and for this offseason, because it will be a doozy.
And thanks to Chris Maselli and Kyle Sullivan, the hosts of Locked On Avalanche, for that report. Obviously, the flip side of the thrilling win for Dallas is the gut-wrenching, soul-crushing loss for the Avalanche. And, of course, making it worse is that a former star is the guy who beats you. And you talk about a Game 7 performance for the ages for Mikko Rantanen. The trade goes down as, just an awful trade. And I know that Colorado did not trade Mikko Rantanen to Dallas, but they decided, and this is a team that's in it to win cups now. They've got Nathan MacKinnon and Cale Makar in their prime. Mm-hmm. And the fact is, even though maybe that trade was was shrewd long-term if they couldn't re-sign Rantanen. You didn't want to let him walk for nothing. But for their title hopes this season, there's no doubt they were a lesser team trading Mikko Rantanen, as good as Marty Necas was. If they keep Rantanen and they either bite the bullet at the end of the season, or maybe they figure out a way to re-sign him between now and then, they're a better team now. But that wasn't the case. And of course, they couldn't have foreseen that Rantanen would end up going against them in the first round. But that trade has totally blown up in the Avalanche faces.
This particular topic is part of the reason why I knew when we were planning for this show after Game 7 between the Stars and the Avalanche that this was going to be a major talking point. And obviously the Locked On podcast, like a show for the Colorado Avalanche, they're going to be heavily on that particular storyline. But as you mentioned, and I want to talk about this at length here, if I may, when the trade happened between the Avalanche and the Carolina Hurricanes, at that time, I personally felt that the issue at hand was that the Avalanche were not willing to pay, or at least meet Mikko Rantanen halfway at what he was asking for. And what he was asking for was fair money. He wanted to be compensated like fairly based upon the offensive production that he has given. So when he got traded to Carolina and Rantanen knew that he was not going to re-sign with the Carolina Hurricanes, he said, we're going to have to move him. And ultimately he ends up with Dallas. This was the kind of move that, yes, at the time it was scrutinized, it was talked about, it shocked the entire hockey world. But even now, in the aftermath of what was, and it was, a historic collapse in Game 7 where you're up 2-0. And yes, I know the 2-goal lead is the worst lead in hockey, but the way that they lost this Game 7 with Mikko Rantanen scoring the hat trick and obviously Wyatt Johnston having the game winner that made it a 3-2 game for the Stars, this was one of those times where you're going to have to start questioning everything for the Colorado Avalanche because, as you mentioned, 7 straight losses in the Game 7, philosophy, something broke them in that third period that just truly does not make much sense if you're the Colorado Avalanche. Listen, Josh Manson did his job. Nathan McKinnon did his job. He provided y'all with a 2-0 lead. But in that third period defensively, I didn't think like anything major changed. But once Rantanen scored that first goal, something absolutely broke. And I don't know if it was the fact that lead was cut in half, or it was the fact that it was Rantanen that started scoring for the Stars. But man, I think this is an off season for the Colorado Avalanche. They're going to have to do some serious soul searching because something has got to change outside of the 1 year, that 2022, 3 years ago, where they won the Stanley Cup. But something's got to change in terms of how this team proceeds forward in terms of addressing their playoff failures outside of that 2022 Stanley Cup run.
So the Stars eliminate Colorado for the second year in a row. Again, I know there are some people that hate that this was a first-round matchup, but it is what it is, and it was certainly a great, great series. And congratulations to the Dallas Stars again for winning without 2 key pieces and making it past a very good Colorado team. It says a lot for Dallas going forward. Still going to be tough. It's never easy, but what a statement that they made winning that first-round series. So round 2 will be the Dallas Stars against the winner of another Game 7 coming up. We'll talk about Blues and Jets in a moment here on Locked On NHL Game Night. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices, no console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed. It is as easy as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. With 4K streaming, watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus Max, and more. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controllers required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 2nd and 1st Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. Well, Shu, it'll be a lot for our other Game 7 to live up to the Game 7 we saw on Saturday, but there's certainly storylines, there's certainly drama to be had as the Winnipeg Jets, the President's Trophy winners, the champs in the Central Division, will be taking on the scrappy second wildcard team, the 8th seed, the St. Louis Blues in the West. How about this? This game will be the 200th Game 7 in NHL Stanley Cup playoff history. It's kind of cool. But of course, the big storyline going into it is something we've been talking about a lot of people have, and that's, of course, Jets goaltender Connor Hellebuyck. He's going to win the Vezina. He might win the Hart. He's a great regular season goalie, but he has been the story of this series. 3 road games, 3 times he's been pulled. His goals against on the road, 7.24. His save percentage, 758. However, this game is not being played in St. Louis. It's being played in Winnipeg, where he's 3-0. The goals against average is 2.33. The save percentage is 879. It's not great, but it's not in the 700s like it is in St. Louis. Every team's won in the series so far. Do you think home ice will be a happy place for Connor Hellebuyck?
No. Point blank. It will not be a happy place for Connor Hellebuyck. And this is my reasons why. St. Louis Blues fans who I have interacted more in the last couple of weeks than I have in the last 5 years combined. They have been clamoring, we want Connor in net for Game 7. You know what? I don't blame you, because the seed of doubt has already been planted. And if you're Connor Hellebuyck at this point, you're just like, look, you're a battler. You want to be in net for Game 7. Of course, he's a prideful man as he should be. But however, the fact of the matter is this: if you're the St. Louis Blues, you have to score the first goal in Game 7. And I think it's going to be so important, because if you do, you are now creating and planting more seeds of doubt that's going to grow into something else for Winnipeg. And in the case of kind of Hellebuyck, I'm not. They're saying all the right things in the press, in the media, with all the articles and comments that are out there, but it's all politically correct stuff. If you can see right through the fluff and all through the nonsense, let's face it, they have every right to start questioning, like, hey, Hellebuyck, how's your mental psyche for Game number 7? Where are you at in your game? And if you're the St. Louis Blues, you're like, I mean, you know what? Why not go ahead and pull a Nathan Horton, please, in Game number 7 in Winnipeg? Take some of the ice from the Enterprise Center in St. Louis, pour it at Canada Life Center in Winnipeg before the game, make Winnipeg's ice your home ice, and I think Winnipeg will, in fact, lose Game 7. I expect it, honestly, because St. Louis has got that kind of confidence where, listen, the Winnipeg Jets have had absolutely no answer for the defenseman core of the St. Louis Blues that has dominated this series offensively.
Well, we talked about it in a previous show. All the pressure is on Winnipeg. I know that when, they're at home, and I know they're 3-0, and I get all that. But as you said, if they don't start right, if Connor Hellebuyck lets in a softie to start this thing, all the life is going to be sucked out of that building, and all the players are going to be saying, including Connor Hellebuyck, oh my God, here we go again. But also consider this. Yes, all the attention is on Connor Hellebuyck, justifiably so. Jordan Binnington's a big game goalie. He's won a Stanley Cup. He won the Four Nations for Canada against Connor Hellebuyck in the U.S. He may not be a future Hall of Famer like Connor Hellebuyck may be, but he comes up big in big games. If you're asking me if I'm going to bet my money on which goalie is going to be better in this Game 7, I'm betting it on Jordan Binnington. I'm not betting it on Connor Hellebuyck. But the Jets do have to help out Hellebuyck too, right? They've got to put pressure on Jordan Binnington. They've got to keep it out of their own end as much as possible. 2 shots on goal in the first period of Game 6. They only had 9 in the second period. They've got to have double-digit shots on goal. They've got to help get that crowd into it and help to propel them. Mark Scheifele, they're one of their stars, their top-line center. Game time decision for this game. I thought Jason Robertson might play for Dallas in the Game 7. He couldn't go. Scheifele, we'll see, but he's obviously a very important player. But again, all the pressure on Winnipeg. It's a huge game for that franchise that has had so many failures in the first round.
I couldn't agree more. It's a massive game for Winnipeg Jets organization, and especially the general manager, Kevin on Chevedayoff, in which that I'm like, look, if you lose tomorrow, you got some very serious internal searching that you're going to have to do, because the reality is this. The reality is that, and I talked about it even before the playoffs began with you, Eddie, like, look, the President's Trophy curse is real. And I got laughed at on Twitter. I'm like, y'all don't learn. I see this every single year. And I have seen this now 3 times with my Boston Bruins. But for the Winnipeg Jets in particular, they have got to win Game 7, because the questions and the pressure that's already on the shoulders of Connor Hellebuck is already there. But also, you're going to need your top guns to be your top guns tomorrow if you're Winnipeg. You're going to need Kyle Connor to step up huge in this game. You're going to need Nino Niederreiter, who has had his spots in the series, to come up big for Winnipeg. You're going to need a big-time performance by Josh Morrissey in this game for Winnipeg if they're going to advance past St. Louis. But to your point about Jordan Binnington, he's a big game goaltender, and he's proven that time and time again, which is part of the reason why I have more confidence in Binnington in Game 7 tomorrow than I do in Connor Hellebuck, and for good reason, because his track record has proven as such. He comes up big in big moments.
Well, it is a big, big moment, not only for the Winnipeg Jets, but also in the career potentially of Connor Hellebuck. If he loses this game and doesn't play well, that's a guy who's signed long-term in Winnipeg. They've hitched their wagon to him for better or for worse. There's obviously going to be huge, huge questions if he'll ever be the type of goalie that can get it done in the postseason. It's intriguing. We're looking forward to it. We shall see what happens. We're also going to talk about the NHL coaching carousel coming up, and we have some plus minus to play as well. That's next on Locked On NHL Game Night. There is nothing like the energy of a live game, whether it's catching a last-minute NHL showdown or soaking in the excitement of an NBA matchup. But finding great seats at a great price used to be a challenge until I found Gametime. Gametime makes scoring last-minute tickets easier than ever. Prices actually drop as the event gets closer, and with their all-in pricing, you can see the total cost up front. No surprises at checkout. Save up to 60% off buying for last-minute sports, concerts, comedy, and theater events. And with seat views before you buy, no surprise fees, and the lowest price guarantee, you can book with total confidence. Their lowest price guarantee means I never worry about overpaying. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Shu, we got some coaching news going on in the NHL. The New York Rangers, of course, fired Peter Laviolette after winning the President's Trophy the year before, missing the playoffs this year. They have a new head coach now. They have hired Mike Sullivan, former Stanley Cup winning coach of the Pittsburgh Penguins, to be their next head coach. Any thoughts on Mike Sullivan now being the man in the Big Apple?
I really wanted Mike Sullivan to be the next head coach of the Boston Bruins, and for good reason, because his track record is pretty much like self-explanatory. But then also, as far as the New York Rangers, I think this is a pretty good hire. What I am most curious about in regards to Sullivan is what type of system is he going to set up in New York with the Rangers in particular, where, let's face it, they had major issues in terms of the locker room last season. So much so that they traded away Jacob Trouba. They made a move and traded away Kapokako as well to the Seattle Kraken. So I wonder about what is going to be his first order of business, rectifying the locker room, establishing a culture, something that he was able to do when he was in Pittsburgh, and obviously having Sidney Crosby, Krista Tang, and Evgeny Malkin helped. But I think it's a good hire for the New York Rangers, but I am curious in terms of like how much change will he like, inflict in terms of the locker room for the New York Rangers, and as well as the culture, because that is something that even Mark Messier talked about prior to the Stanley Cup playoffs, is that they have to fix the culture within the organization, because there was something very much amiss prior to the hiring of Mike Sullivan. So I'm curious to see what Coach Sullivan is going to do to help at least establish a new and a better culture with the New York Rangers.
Rick Tocchet announced he's not going to be back as head coach of the Vancouver Canucks. Like the Rangers, the Canucks were a huge disappointment. They go from Pacific Division champs to out of the playoffs, and it was a mess. You talk about culture and locker room issues. Vancouver was a disaster. Now, everyone believes that Rick Tocchet is going to Philadelphia. It seems like it's almost a foregone conclusion. He played 2 different stints in Philadelphia. He's got a relationship with Keith Jones. They played together briefly. Keith Jones, the president of the Philadelphia Flyers. So it seems like that one is going to happen. But, hey, he's sought after. There are a lot of other coaching vacancies. Maybe money talks and he doesn't go to Philadelphia. But it seems like that's where he's going to go. So we've got vacancies in Vancouver, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Anaheim, Seattle, Chicago, and you mentioned your Boston Bruins. How about Dan Bilesma, former Cup winner? He gets 1 season in Seattle, and he's out the door. And very interesting, Joel Quenneville, he interviewed in Anaheim, former 3-time Stanley Cup winner in Chicago. Of course, he was a part of that cover-up in Chicago, the sexual assault, and that led to him being out of the game for a while. Be very interesting to see if he gets another shot. Also, John Cooper, there was that weird story about him maybe going to Utah. They've said that's not going to happen. He'll be back as coach of the Lightning next season. And for my LA Kings, there are reports today that Jim Hiller, who's a rookie head coach this year with the Kings full-time, was the interim last year, had a real disappointing showing in the postseason. He had some pretty glaring mistakes on his part, a coach's challenge that got a lot of attention. But reports are that he and GM Rob Blake are going to be back next season. So we will see about that. We want to play plus minus here with each other. We have a couple of questions to ask each other. Plus, meaning you agree. Minus, meaning you disagree. So let me lead off here, Shu. I'm going to ask you, plus minus, the first round Conn Smythe Trophy winner, if you're going to pick it right now, is Mikko Rantanen.
Oh, man. That's a tough one, because for me, I want to go minus, only because there's something to be said about, listen, he had a tremendous first round, 12 points in a 7-game series for Rantanen, but I really want to, I'm going to lean Florida here and go to the Florida Panthers and wish that look for like first round Conn Smythe. I'm really leaning towards I'm gonna go with Sergei Bobrovsky in the first round for the Florida Panthers.
All right, that's not bad. I don't actually hate that. Although he did beat the team that I picked to win the Stanley Cup, so obviously he'd had a very good performance. I'm going to say plus though. I'm going to say Mikko Rantanen right now for me is the Conn Smythe Trophy winner if you picked it after the first round. All right, you're up. Give me a plus minus.
This one is going to be a bit more challenging. Plus minus. The Blues D will score more goals than the core group of forwards for the Winnipeg Jets tomorrow.
Cam Fowler's having a really good postseason for them.
Mm-hmm.
If Mark Scheifele, if Mark Scheifele doesn't play, then that's a I almost want to push on that one, but you can't do that. So I'm going to go plus. I'm going to go plus on that. I'll say the Blues blue line gets 3 points. I'll say the Jets top line gets 2 points. So I'll say plus on that.
Fair. I would have to agree, because I mean, this series, like the Blues D has 24 points so far through the first 6 games. So I think game 7 they're going to step up huge as well.
All right, my final plus minus for you. If Shukri Wrights had a second chance to pick his Stanley Cup winner, he would pick the Florida Panthers plus minus.
This is crazy. The hockey man in me knows that Florida's probably going to win that series in at least 5 games. But I'm going to stick to my cojones, and I'm going to go with the Maple Leafs. I think they're going to upset the Florida Panthers. And this time I think it's going to be in 6 games. But it's going to be a stiff test. Make no mistake about it. But I'm going to go minus on your call, but I'm going to stick with the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, I'm going to say for me, both of the teams I picked to meet in the Stanley Cup final are out. That was the Tampa Bay Lightning against the Colorado Avalanche. So I will do in my do-over, I will obviously pick the 2 teams that beat my teams. Florida Panthers, Dallas Stars meet in the Stanley Cup final. Do we have time? You got another plus minus for me, or is that all we've got for tonight?
Yes, I got one more for you. Now, plus minus. I'm going to ask you in an interesting way. Who will have the bigger series in terms of the Vegas Golden Knights and the Edmonton Oilers? Will it be Ryan Nugent-Hopkins for Edmonton, or will it be Shea Theodore for the Vegas Golden Knights?
Ryan Nugent-Hopkins wasn't, I mean, obviously I saw every game of that series up close and personal. He had one big goal, but he has not had a great year. I will take Shea Theodore. So I don't know if I pick plus or minus on that. I guess minus. I'm going to say Shea Theodore has a bigger series than Ryan Nugent-Hopkins in Vegas versus the Edmonton Oilers.
Absolutely, I would agree as well. I'm going to go plus in terms of Shea Theodore, not just only in terms of defensively, but offensively when he contributes as well.
All right, you got a taste of some of our local experts on this show with the guys from Locked On Avalanche. Make sure you check out the Locked On show of your favorite NHL team. They'll keep you updated on the latest news and reactions involving your team. I'm Eddie Garcia. He's Shukri Wrights. Thank you for listening and watching Locked On NHL Game Night, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day.